feel really special in this place. So I'm grateful for that too. And yeah, I can tell you a little bit more about myself if you're interested, but I would like to maybe just for context, like Tammy said, I grew up in Tijuana, which is the border region of the United States and Mexico. It's the Torre Brothers would exhibit or have pieces at the cultural center, which is also a museum. And I grew up going there. Don't research, but we were born at the same time, that institution and I, so I kind of grew up going there, and also in my teen years seeing a lot of the brothers' work. So when I was invited to collaborate in this project by the Smithsonian Latino Museum, I was very honored, and it felt like a full circle moment because working with contemporary living artists, is kind of like my thing, but it also feels really special when I can relate to the work and the artists themselves. And also, it has been an enormous privilege because they are not only great artists, but they're fantastic people, which I feel like it's a bonus. They're very amazing human beings and very fun to be around. So I'm excited for you to get to meet them first through their work and also in person a little bit later. So yeah, Collidoscope. Yeah, we can.
It's tricky.
Sure.
I know. Yeah.
More volume?
Yeah.
I'll try to protect. I feel like this space is just larger than I'm used to, so I'll protect a little bit. So to start, Collidoscope, I know that the title is a little, interesting, and it's, like Tammy explained last time, it's a combination of things. You'll see throughout the exhibition that a lot of the works have strange titles because the brothers like to use wordplay and a lot of the titles. Also, a lot of them have Spanglish or a combination between English and Spanish. And so we wanted to bring that to the title of the exhibition and also the titles of the sections, of the thematic sections. And Collidoscope is basically a combination between the word kaleidoscope and collision, because we wanted to represent somehow their work as a duo, kind of ideas coming together, and also the layers of ideas that they bring together in the work, and represented through a kaleidoscope. So that's why collision and kaleidoscope. And then also, very importantly, the retro-perspective word is also kind of like a play on words on the word retrospective, because this is not a traditional retrospective, even though it is a retrospective, just because of the way that they work and they collaborate together. So it's sort of like, the word retro, that also means looking back and looking forward, because the work is, you'll see that you can see an evolution, especially when they start working with the lenticulars, the lenticular technique, but also all of the works kind of mesh history. They're anachronistic in the sense that they combine the past, the present, and the future, and also different cultures coming together. So that's what we wanted to represent with the title. So that's why it's a little funky. And then or as a curator, I think it's kind of like a traditional way of curating in a way to make thematic sections, just sort of to help interpretation and to navigate the exhibition, the works, and the space where they are presented. But also important to note is that we talked about this with Tammy a little bit, that if you move an object to another section, it still makes sense, just because all of the themes are represented in each of the works. So the first section is retrocollage, which is a play on words on the word retrato, portrait, and collage. And a lot of the works that are on this beautiful pedestal, they are tonales. Tonali is, I don't know if you have read or seen his art materials. You're familiar with that word, so it's sort of like having your soul represented or your spirit represented with an animal or like something outside of your body. The aspects also in that, or of the first. And so some of them are representing tonali, so they have different characters. Like for example, you see Princess Tonali, which they created right after Princess passing, and some of them are combinations of Aztec deities with present time characters or symbolizing something cultural in the present. For example, I think it's the third one, El Pozolero, which is a soup maker, and I feel I love soup as a concept because I feel like soup represents, culturally a lot of every culture has a soup, and it usually represents also the food of poor people or low income kind of sector. And it's sort of like a way of putting ingredients together and making something rich and beautiful. And I feel like that is also kind of like representing their work. They have actually worked with themes of food in other installations, and you'll see food also represented in some of the works. But that work in particular has a very kind of heavy topic. It represents this kind of personification of people, especially in the region where I'm from, in Tijuana. The narcos will disappear bodies by putting them in acid, but then colloquially, the people who do that were referred to as pozoleros. Pozolero is it's a Mexican soup, kind of like pho, that is broth based, and so that again is like a very heavy topic. But the brothers have a way to represent very serious parts of our history with humor, and I feel like that is an aspect of their work that I really enjoy because it really represents life. Like right now we're going through very conflictive political time, but also everyday life has. Also times of levity. So I think that's why their work is so interesting because it always has those two things in conversation. So then, that's sort of like an example of that type of work. And then maybe we can, which is part of Mexican culture. We see death as just part of the same cycle, and we celebrate it. And it's also a way of living life. I don't know, I'm thinking of, for example, of a poem by another artist, Roberto Mata, that is called, like, the day is, what is the word? Like, a day is dangerous, like, I feel like contemporary life, like, we're very much used to comfort, and even we have seem to like cheat death and like be live longer and more youthful, but death is very much part of life, and it's always with us, sort of like the tonalis, like the spirit that is always with you. And in I don't know, I feel like in different ways, even if you're not Mexican, you can relate to that. I feel like being a woman, you feel that, I feel like death is always kind of like a thing that is present with us, and it's about survival but also celebration of life. So those are, you'll see the representation of this kind of idea of life and death being part of the same cycle, and the different mandala-like or Aztec calendar-like pieces. So we can move to different kind of molecules or cells of disease with sculptures. Showing also the gold, the Spanish encounter when they got here. So, we really like to include pieces that reference history, and again, very tongue-in-cheek. You know, it's a very heavy subject and very real, and I feel like it's still, you know, if we live in postmodern words and world right now, and also kind of like in the colonial times, we are still living very much in that sort of history that is repeating itself. And resin and lenticulars and other types of like found objects in the work. And the lenticular resin, I don't know, I'm not very knowledgeable of the actual technique. We can ask the brothers, but lenticulars are like the holographic, you know, growing up, I think it always existed in the past as something kind of like mass-produced, but it shows, it's made also in layers, and when you move, we have this kind of like dance, like scene, you know, the images back and forth. It has, one side shows one image and the other has another image, so it has the feeling of motion, even though it's not, the object is not actually moving. But that is also very, like, to me, it's the most logical evolution from the mandalas to this. Like, I think when I saw the lenticular stuff, I'm like, yeah, obviously, if their work is about layering and also kind of showing different perspectives, this is kind of like the, yes, of course, this is the next step, which is, you know, I think very, very curious. And for example, this work is about the border of Tijuana and San Diego, where I'm from, and where they also live part-time. They live between both sides of the border, which is, for some people, like for example, I grew up in Tijuana, but I started going to high school on the other side, so in San Diego, so crossing every day. So you will see also on the other side, kind of like that process of crossing a border every day, which is a privilege that not everyone has. I have, you know, like my brothers, the privilege of legality, but unfortunately that's not the case for everyone. But the people who do, there's very much part of the life of the city or the region is to go to the other side to do shopping or to go to work or to go to school, and it's sort of like a normal kind of thing, which I don't feel like it's very, like when we see the border of Tijuana in the media is very much about the violence or, you know, the undocumented sort of struggle and all of that, and also Tijuana is portrayed as a desert, which I'm like, it's not. I mean, like ecologically, I guess we're in the desert, but it is a city, it's a big city, and it has, you know, this flow of people going back and forth the border throughout the day, and it's very much alive, and it's very much part of the city life and experience of doing the work. So this is kind of like representing that, like a beating heart that is beating or pumping blood across the border, up and down, so to the states into Tijuana. And some of the veins or arteries are representing the main freeways that connect different cities and sides from like the states to Mexico, actually. So yeah, it's sort of like representing that. Yeah, and I'm like trying to see what else. There's like tacos and beer, you know, very representative, like things linked to Mexico. But yeah, I very much enjoy this aspect of the work that speaks about the border in a non-traditional way, or in a way that really explores the life and the experience of living in the border, and not as a concept like we are used to in the media. So then, yeah, these two works are also mixing lenticular with different 3D elements and resin and mixing found objects. You'll see, I don't know if you got a chance, some of you, to see the objects that they have been creating here and how they insert other things into the glass, you know, maybe like glass and glass, but sculptures like within like a single piece. And to me, that's also really interesting because it speaks about the layering, and nothing is straightforward. Everything has different meanings, different layers, and it's not only about life, but also about human experience, but a very specific experience of living in the border, being kind of binational, and having this identity that is layered and superimposed.
So it has 3 layers.
It has many layers, that all of them have different layers. So you can see one that is like flowers, and then it's depends on the officer. There's this whole thing that you have to have a technique on how to do it well. But anyway, so this hybrid dislocation, so it talks very much about being living this life of hybridity, and also being feeling dislocated, and kind of now that I was gonna say that now living in LA, I feel like I experience time in a very different way, because sometimes it amazes me how living in Tijuana and crossing the border and doing all these things and spending so much time in the queue, I would still get to do a lot of stuff, and in LA there's like a different problem with the traffic, and I feel like I do less things in LA. Like time just runs very differently, and I'm like, how was I able to, cross back and forth and do this and do that, and I still have time to, and in LA is very different. So it's just like a very different way of how like the passage of time and the experience of life is very different. So I feel like that is very much inspiring the title of Hybrid Dislocations, and feeling this hybridity and also dislocation, and not necessarily in a bad way, because I think that living or experiencing life in the border, you will actually feel like you belong to both places. Versus, so I'm Mexican American without the hyphen, because I am 100% Mexican and I'm 100% American, but there are Mexican Americans who have lived a different life growing up in the States, and there's always this tension, I think, especially with generations that have been there for a while, and because of political reasons have even lost some of the language, but still retain the culture, and they feel kind of like half and half. And I think it's a very different way of experiencing identity, so it's sort of like speaking about those differences too. And just to talk briefly about some of these works, those sculptures I found very beautiful. The one that is about the craft, the audio guide is super interesting, because they speak about art school and how the tensions between high art and craft, and how craft sometimes or like presently is sort of like different than art, which is very interesting, because throughout history I feel like craft has resurgence. There's different times where craft has been actually the main thing, and we have arte povera and also rascuachismo and Chicano art, and I feel like art and craft are the same thing, but it's very interesting how they can be different just because of elitism and different ways of looking at what high art is supposed to mean. And then Baja Cali, I really love this piece because, as you will see, especially with some works on this side, they take a lot of religious iconography, but not only Catholic, also from other cultures and other religions, and they are personifying the goddess Kali, who's the goddess of death and life. Now, I don't know, something like that, but it's also kind of like Coatlicue, which I have tattooed here. They're about life, but also destruction, and they have sort of like a mother role in the pantheon of deities, but they also represent life and death. So she's kind of like giving birth, but also I think eating, like Saturn, eating her children. And it's the play on words is for Cali, California, like Baja California, like God is Cali. So there's always this kind of levity and play in the words.
What we do is a parallax blocker, meaning that the lens is lines, and they're little prisms, and you can see one image through the window, and then the other one. That's really all it is. But now you can also use that lens to create an optical illusion of depth. If you take the lens off, it'll just be, you wouldn't be able to see anything. I think the eyes are the only thing it has in common on both images. The rest completely changes, which means you wouldn't understand it at all. And the lens makes you look at, blocks one of the images so you can see the other one. Again, parallax blocker.
So this tour is about to wrap up. Do you want to grab